Welcome, everybody, to the Geek Dad Report versus the NFL. I'm Brian West, and today we are going to be predicting some games. That's right. It's week 2 of the NFL, and we're going to see if we can correctly predict all the winners for the games coming up. I guess we can't move on to week 2 before we talk a little bit about week 1. Last week I predicted 14 games, and I started out pretty hot. I went 7 of 9 with the first 9 games, and then my predictions went straight in the toilet. I ended the week 7-7 in my predictions, so hopefully you didn't go out and bet the house on it. But you know what? I did pick some pretty big upsets, so if you bet on those, you're probably pretty happy. Now, small disclaimer: this is not a show where I am telling you to go out and bet. This is not a betting show. I do this strictly for fun. I am not an expert, as you can tell from last week's lack of proper naming the right players, which we're going to get into as the show goes on. But I do this because I love the NFL, I love sports, and I like to talk about it and have some fun. So if you'd like to take my predictions and take them to the bank and bet everything you own, well, that's on you. Do not come looking for me if it does not pan out. I do a little bit of research, but this is for fun. So that being said, like I said, 7-7 in last week's just crazy crap fest that was the NFL. I feel was pretty good. Normally I'll pick 16 games, but last week I recorded late. I didn't start the show until Thursday, so I missed the Thursday night game, which is probably for the best because I would have picked the Patriots and I would have been a big fat loser. And the Miami Dolphins and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game was postponed until week 16 or something. So we only have 14 games. This week we have a full slate of 16 games, and we're going to get to them all. So like I said, 7-7. Hopefully we can do much better this week. But come on, guys, let's take 30 seconds and talk about the just terrible week that was the first week in the NFL. It was like an all-time just crap offense week. I mean, I think there was only 33 or 34 touchdowns scored, and I think 9 of those came from the Kansas City Patriots game on Thursday. It was some terrible football this week. Terrible. So if you predicted poorly, week 1 is always rough because you just don't know which teams are really going to be good, which teams are really going to be bad, which teams have improved or gotten worse from last year. And like I said, everybody kind of looked like they were sleepwalking this week. So if you're sitting there at home on Sunday watching these games thinking, I feel like nobody practiced, you are not alone, because pretty much everyone feels that way because teams just look terrible. Quarterbacks who are normally really good are just overthrowing guys by 20 yards or throwing balls at their feet. Running backs look slow. Offensive lines look like they didn't know what they were doing. Coaches called just some terrible plays. So, hopefully we can hopefully a lot of us, including my beloved Seattle Seahawks, can take the week 1 and just kind of chuck it out the window and start fresh week 2. So that being said, hopefully we've got enough information. Hopefully I've got enough information to make some successful predictions. And for those of you who pointed out, like I said earlier, that I did not properly call players by their right names, well, you know what? I took better notes this week, so hopefully we'll see how it goes. But like I said, I'm not a trained professional. If you guys would like to pay me to be a trained professional, we'll keep watching and we'll see what happens. But anyway, whatever. On to the game. So first up this week, we have the Thursday night game. Houston is going to Cincinnati in a battle of 2 0-1 teams who, frankly, both looked terrible in week 1. Houston got their doors blown off by Jacksonville. You know what? $5 for you if you saw that coming. I need proof that you called that before the game, and I'll send you $5. Well, maybe. I don't know. Depends on how many people call me out on this. But yeah, who saw that coming? I mean, Jacksonville, I think they're a much improved team this year. But yeah, Houston, wow. I mean, when Dan Savage is your quarterback. For the record, I know it's Tom Savage, but I don't even care if it was like one of the Savage brothers from the TV show. I don't care. Fred Savage, I don't know what his stupid brother's name is, but I don't care what Savage you are. You were terrible. You got yanked in the first quarter, and you still look terrible. Deshaun Watson looked a lot better. He did manage to score a few points, so I think he's already been named the starter for this week's game. I think he could give the Bengals a little bit of problems. But let's talk about the Bengals for a second. Baltimore went into Cincinnati and just beat the crap out of them, shut them out, 20-0. Andy Dalton threw 4 interceptions. They had no running game. They just look terrible. They look absolutely terrible. Now, Baltimore is tough to beat. They got a good defense, and like I said last week, they are good early in games, but that is still no excuse for the absolute crap fest that we got from Cincinnati and Houston, honestly. So this is going to be a tough one. You got two teams, both bad. I do not think Cincinnati is going to get much better, but the Texans, man, they just look bad. And when you're starting running back or you're starting quarterback, lead your team in rushing. That is never an answer for success. But then again, Baltimore didn't even manage to have much offense, and they still managed to put up 20 points on the Cincinnati defense at home. All right, so I got to pick here. Let's see here. Texans, they lost Brian Cushing. That is going to hurt them. The Bengals, I think, were thoroughly embarrassed, so I think they're going to play a little bit better at home this time. I do not want to pick the Bengals because I think they're terrible, but like I said, Deshaun Watson is not a great quarterback. He does have some fantasy options if you're picking him in fantasy. He's a decent runner, and he did throw for a touchdown, but even with DeAndre Hopkins, I just don't see the Texans beating the Bengals. I think the Bengals were thoroughly embarrassed, so I think they're going to bounce back this week, and I think they're going to squeak out one against the Texans because they just do not have a quarterback. They do not have a running game. They have a super talented receiver, but no one to give him the ball. So I don't know. Unless Deshaun Watson can take leaps and bounds, I think Cincinnati will bounce back. And like I said, Cincinnati in this one. So there we go. All right, on to the Sunday games. First up, we have Cleveland versus Baltimore. Cleveland last week was actually surprisingly good. They took the Steelers right to the limits. I was watching that going, I cannot believe I'm going to lose this prediction. I mean, who would have, once again, like Jacksonville, who would have thought Cleveland would be put up any fight? I don't know if this has more to do with the Steelers just didn't play well or Cleveland's gotten better. I will say Kaiser, the rookie quarterback for Cleveland, actually played decently. He had quite a few rushing yards. He rushed for a touchdown. He threw for, I think, 200 and something yards. Not great, but not terrible. That said, Baltimore's defense right now is playing lights out. They went into Cincinnati, like I said earlier. They had 5 sacks, picked off Andy Dalton 4 times, and still managed to put up 20 points with Flacco not playing that well. Not much of a running game, but they did just enough to win this. So I think even though Cleveland may be better this year than we think, I still don't think they're there yet. So it's going to be pretty tough for them to go into Baltimore and win. Baltimore has one of the better home records in the NFL. I think there's something like 26-5 or something in the last 5 years. So at home, so I'm gonna say the Ravens are gonna win this one. I think the Browns are gonna put up a fight though. Should be a pretty good game. All right, next up, Chicago versus Tampa Bay. Not much to say about Tampa Bay yet at this point. We do not know what they're going to be. If they're going to be one of those teams in their first week where they come out and just don't look good, where they look flat, but. Jameis Winston is still an infinitely better quarterback than Mike Glennon. Chicago put up a lot of, not points, but they put up a lot of fight against Atlanta and gave Atlanta all they could get. But the Bears lost yet another receiver. This is like 3, I think, for the season already. They are losing talent by the game, and it's only been week 1. Their defense is a lot scrappier than I think people give them credit for, but you have Mike Glennon as your quarterback. He's not good. So I just don't see Tampa Bay losing this. Even if they come out flat, they're playing at home. They have a pretty solid defense. They got a lot of offensive firepower, and I just don't see. I think Mike Evans could have a big game in this one. So I just don't see the Bears going and getting it done in Tampa. But I do think the Bears could be a little bit better than we give them credit for. If they hadn't had as many injuries already in the season, I might pick them a little bit higher. But I'm going to say Tampa Bay is going to win this one, and another close one in Tampa. All right, next up we got the Vikings and the Steelers. So Steelers did not impress this week. When they played Cleveland, I believe Cleveland went into Pittsburgh and still almost beat them. That being said, they have Antonio Brown, who is insane. He had like 180 yards. He pretty much had all of Roethlisberger's, like 230 yards passing. All went to Antonio Brown. The dude is uncoverable. The Vikings, though, have probably one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL. They showed it off this week when they just manhandled the Saints. Sam Bradford threw for over 300 yards. I did not see that coming. I still do not think the Vikings offense is going to be that great this year. But you know what? they did what they did against the Saints. So I don't know if the Saints defense is just continually going to be terrible or if the Vikings actually maybe figure something out. Stephon Diggs had a good game. The Vikings rookie running back Cook rushed for like 140 yards. So I do not look for the Vikings to have the same production against the Steelers. Man, can the Vikings go into Pittsburgh and win, though? That is the thing. The Steelers are really tough at home, and I think that close call against Cleveland is going to wake them up a little bit. So I see, I'm going to say the Steelers are going to pull it out against the Vikings. It's going to be ugly, and it wouldn't shock me if the Vikings won, but Steelers are at home. They're pretty tough at home. Big Ben is hard to beat there, and Antonio Brown is a freak show. I don't care who's covering him. That dude just catches everything. So I'm going to say the Steelers, and yet another close one, are gonna take this from the Vikings. But don't sleep on the Vikings this year. They actually might be pretty good. All right, next up, we've got New England and New Orleans. All right, this one's going to be short. New England got embarrassed at home by the Chiefs. Tom Brady looked terrible. Gronkowski did look slow. Their running game was all right, but their defense was just embarrassing. Alex Smith and Kareem Hunt just crushed their defense. I mean, Alex Smith threw for like 360 yards. Raise your hand if you had him in fantasy. Not me. Had Tom Brady. Was not happy with the outcome of that game. But anyway, I just think that New England is going to be real mad, and I think that they are going to score a lot of points. The Saints just gave up, like I said a second ago, 300 yards to Sam Bradford and 140 on the ground. I think this could be a monster game for New England's offense. It could be a little bit of a shootout since New England's defense clearly has no pass rushers whenever Hightower's not there. And I think he sprained his knee, but he'll probably play. This is going to be a high-scoring game, but I think New England's going to win this one. I cannot imagine a Bill Belichick coach team going 0-2 to start the season. So, New England. All right, next up, Eagles versus the Chiefs. So this is going to be another good game. There's actually a lot of really good games on the schedule. Well, there's a lot of bad ones too, which we're leading up to. But this is going to be another tight one, man. Philly surprised me last week. Their defense played really tough. Carson Wentz looked really good against the Washington Native Americans. And I don't know, all around, they look like a well-balanced team that's going to win some games this year. Kansas City, we already talked about, had a really impressive win against New England. Kareem Hunt. Need some water after that one. Whew, Freudian slip there. Kareem Hunt looks like he's the real deal. Dude rushed for massive yards. If you had him in fantasy, you're doing cartwheels. And Alex Smith looks like he still is actually, he might be a better quarterback this year than he's been in years past. But I think losing Eric Berry could be a really big deal for them. He's out for the season with a torn Achilles. That being said, I don't know if the Eagles have enough firepower to go into Kansas City and win. Kansas City's going to be, they have a lot of rest. It's almost like a bye week for them because they played on Thursday. They're going to win this game. I'm going to say Kansas City is going to outlast the Eagles. I think the Eagles put up a fight, but Kansas City just looks really good this year. So taking Kansas City at home. All right, next up, Titans and the Jaguars. So Jaguars beat the hell out of Houston. Don't really know if that's because Houston wasn't ready or Jacksonville is really that good. That being said, Jacksonville's offense did not look all that great against Houston, and they lost Allen Robinson for the year, so they're already going to be down their best running back or their best receiver. Fournette, their rookie running back, did look like he had a pretty good game. It does look like he might be the real deal. So we'll see. That being said, the Titans have a pretty good defense. They held Marshawn Lynch to 76 yards. David Carr didn't pass for a ton of yards, and Marcus Mariota looks like he's ready to become one of the next great dual threat passing, running and rushing quarterbacks. But you do not want your quarterback leading the team in rushing yards, which is what he did last week. But you know what? I think Jacksonville, as tough as they are, I think the Titans are kind of in a must-win situation. I think the Titans are better than people give them credit for. I think they're going to get their passing game going. I think they're going to get their running game going, and I think the Titans are going to go into Jacksonville and squeak out a win. So I'm taking the Titans on this one. Next up, Cardinals and the Colts. Not going to waste a lot of time. The Cardinals are god-awful. They lost David Johnson, possibly for the season. He dislocated his wrist. He is their entire offense. Carson Palmer, like I said last week, is old, done. Stick a fork in him. Carson Palmer is a joke, and he is just about to get himself out of the NFL. They have no offense. But the Colts have no defense, no quarterback. And, I mean, come on. Scott Tolzien is your quarterback, Indianapolis? Scott Tolzien? You'd be better off if you put Uncle Rico in and had him throw this football over that mountain, because Scott Tolzien is not an NFL quarterback. He's not a college quarterback. He might not even be a high school quarterback at this point. The Colts have Frank Gore. I think he's like 150 as their running back. The Colts are going to get the doors blown off them. The Cards, even though they are terrible, are somehow going to score a bunch of points, and their defense, probably on defense. If you got the Cardinals defense, I would definitely start them this week because the Colts are terrible. So going with the Cards in this one. Bills, Panthers. You know, the Bills look pretty good against the Jets in week 1, but it's the Jets who I don't think are going to win a game all season. And the Panthers did not look good, but even as bad as they look, they still managed to just stomp the 49ers in just a snooze fest. I think Cam Newton will get it together. He had off-season shoulder surgery. It may take him a little while to go. McCaffrey couldn't get going. Running back, luckily Jonathan Stewart had an okay day. But Carolina's defense is just too strong. And I just don't, Tyrod Taylor looked all right, and LaShawn McCoy is fantastic. But I think Carolina's defense is going to be able to wrangle those two up and win this game in a close one. So I'm going to say the Panthers at home are taking out the Bills. Next up, the Jets and the Raiders. I just said it. The Jets are going 0 for this year. Josh McCown is still your quarterback last time I checked. So as long as he's your quarterback, you're not going to win, Jets. Real quick shout out to Javon Curse. Or Jermaine Curse. I just can't even say his name right. That's why he's out of Seattle. Because you don't even know if he's Javon, Jermaine. You just don't even care. But Jermaine Curse, ex-Seahawk, always going to give a shout-out to. Led the team in catches. That just goes to show you how bad the Jets are. We cast off our 4-string receiver, and he's immediately the number 1 receiver in New York. So, and if you have beast mode, this is the week to start him. I think he's going to rush for 300 yards against the Jets. Probably not 300, but I bet you Marshawn Lynch goes for over 100 yards against the Jets, and I think the Raiders win this one going away. It's going to be just if you got money and you want to bet on a game, bet on this one. Bet it all. The Raiders are going to smash the Jets at home. All right, next up, the Dolphins and the Chargers. This is another game where we haven't seen what the Dolphins look like, so it's it's kind of like a week 1 game. Just gonna throw something out there and see what happens. So this is based more on what I saw from the Chargers, which actually was a lot. I mean, they have a pretty solid running game. Their coach is going to just dedicate himself to the run because he did not pass at all for the most part in that game until the second half when he had to. And they played it up really, really top Denver, top 10 Denver defense. And managed to get right to the end. If they would have made that field goal, they would have taken that to overtime. So 21 points on an elite defense on the road. I think the Chargers are going to be tough this year. Miami has Smoke and Jay Cutler as their quarterback. That dude is a pick machine. Probably throw for a lot of yards, but the Chargers are tough against the run, and Jay Adai is their best running backs or their best weapon in Miami. So I think Miami's an 8-8 team, and they're going into a not a hostile environment with their 15,000 fans at the Charger Stadium in LA, but when I say I think I was in San Diego earlier. All right, Los Angeles Chargers. Sorry about that. But I think the Chargers are going to be really fired up. They lost a really close one in Denver, and they really need this one to stay in the division. So, stay ahead in the division with 2 other good teams. So I'm going to say Dolphins are going down. It's going to be tuna fish. All right, next up, the Niners and the Seahawks. You know what? That game last week, quick rant of the week. Maybe I'll have my moment that made me just super angry last week. I don't want to blame the officials, even though they had 2 of the worst calls I've ever freaking seen. But our offensive line was garbage. Seattle, if you're listening to this, get your act together, offensive line. This is the Niners. If you guys don't win 40-0, I'm going to be real angry. Take out all your aggression. It was a good Green Bay team that we lost to, but still, you can be better. Get it done. That's all I'm going to say. A little frustrated. Was a little frustrated watching that Packers game. Our offense was terrible. There's more offensive linemen chasing defensive tackles in the backfield than there was people blocking anybody. Stupid. It's bad play calling. Can we fire Bevel? Come on, Bevel. Why are we throwing wide receiver screens 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage to Jimmy Graham? When's the last time you checked his 40 time? Dude's like 6'7". He's there because he's bigger than everybody, not because he's faster than everybody. The hell. Anyway. Seattle has an elite defense. They showed it. I really think this could be a record-setting year for the defense. They gave Aaron Rodgers pretty much all he can handle, and if the offense hadn't been so god-awful putrid, we might have won that game. So, that being said, the Niners are terrible. They're coming into the clink. We did not lose at home. I'm going to be there cheering them on, and since I'm there, I'm good luck. I'm going to say that Seattle is going to steamroll the Niners. In fact, this could be a shutout. Big time. Like I said, I want 42-0 is what I want in this game. Bet the house. If you got 2 games you're going to bet on, this is one of them. Once again, I'm not a professional. Do not take my advice unless you have lots of money to lose. And if you lose it all, do not blame me. I'm very passionate. And side note, I'm probably going to bet the Seahawks to win every single game this year. So I would take my pick with the Hawks with a grain of sand. I am a homer, and it's going to show on my picks all year. All right, next up, the Washington Native Americans and the St. Louis Rams. The Native Americans look terrible. Kirk Cousins was getting beat up all day. Their line might be as bad as the Seahawks. And if the Rams do one thing really well, it's just destroy bad offensive lines. They won like 42-9 or something against the Colts. It was just a bloodbath. I think they could possibly do the same things to the Native Americans. I do think Washington will get their act together a little bit. I don't think they'll quite look as disorganized as they did against Philadelphia. But the Rams have a better defense than the Eagles do. And I don't know. I'm going to say the Rams, as much as I don't like them, I think they're going 2-0. I think they're going to be first in this division by the end of this week. So anyway, the Rams over the Native Americans. Next up, we got a really good one. The Cowboys and the Broncos. The Broncos, like we said earlier, had a really good game, a really tough game against the Chargers, but they managed to pull through. Nothing really that impressive on offense. They got just enough done to take care of business. And there wasn't a lot of offensive stats, but it was enough because their defense is super elite and was able to kind of ground and pound that game. The Cowboys kind of did the same thing against the Giants. The Giants had a pretty tough defense, but their offense was terrible, and the Cowboys took advantage of it. Excuse me. I think there's going to be kind of the same type of game here. I think it could be a lower scoring, probably 17-21 type game. I'm going to give this to the Broncos. I think the Cowboys, I don't think Dak played great. He played all right, but going into Denver playing all right against that defense isn't going to cut it. And Ezekiel Elliott is, if he's playing the game, which I think he's gonna, who knows, week to week with the suspension, we'll see what happens, but they're going to rely heavily on him. But I think if you play the ground and pound game, I think that works to Denver's favor. So I'm going to take Denver at home against the Cowboys. All right, next up, Packers and the Falcons. My guess is this is the game of the week since it's the Sunday night game. Well, it wouldn't be the game of the week. I know it's the Sunday night game. It's another good one, man. This should be a good Sunday night game. The Packers, I'm not going to say they look really good against the Seahawks, but considering how tough the Seattle's defense is, Aaron Rodgers did really well against them, and eventually they basically won. Well, that was a stupid statement. They won, and they did what they needed to do to take care of business, and asterisk beat my Seahawks. All right, not asterisks. I'm just a sore loser. Sorry. I'm a homer. What do you want from me? But no, the Packers, they handled their business at home. They beat the Hawks, which, that could have been an NFC championship preview. Let's hope the Hawks play better in that game if we do get there. But their offense looks like they're poised to be one of the better offensive teams in the league, and surprisingly, their defense actually looks really good. Last year they were really beat up with injuries. This year they're pretty healthy, so it kind of shows what happens when you have your best players on your team, what you can do. But the Falcons are coming off a very unimpressive win against the Bears, and the Bears gave them all they could get, and the Falcons just did not look really good. Freeman rushed for like 30 yards. Matt Ryan did manage to throw over 300 yards, but I think like 70 of that came on a lucky pass. Well, a pass to a wide open blown coverage tight end who had the slowest run I've ever seen into the end zone. I really want to pick the Falcons in this, but God, I think Green Bay coming off that big Seattle win, I think they're going to go into Atlanta and beat the Falcons. The Falcons just did not impress me. I hope I'm wrong, because damn it, I hate the Packers and I want them to lose. Besides the fact that I want home field advantage throughout the playoffs, so I need the Packers to lose. But I'm going to say the Packers are going to go into Atlanta and beat the Falcons. The Falcons did not impress me last week. We'll see what happens. Hope I'm wrong. All right, and finally, last game of the week is the Monday Night Football. Is the Lions going into New York to play the Giants? Let's see here. The Lions played a lot better than I thought they would. I mean, Matt Stafford threw 4 touchdowns. And, Arizona has a good defense. They're a better defense, I think, than what the Giants are going to be. He threw for 4 touchdowns. The defense played really well, but Arizona's offense is really bad. And when David Johnson went out, the whole tide just turned in that game. The Giants looked awful against the Cowboys. Without Odell Beckham, they just have no offense. I'm going to say Odell Beckham is going to play in this one, and the Giants, everyone said the Giants are going to be amazing defense. They got this great team. You know what? I'm going to say Odell Beckham's going to play, so if he's playing, I'm going to say the Giants are going to squeak one out. The Lions were not all that impressive in their win, but like I said, they did throw 4 touchdowns against Arizona, who does have a pretty decent defense. But that being said, the Lions just could not really run the ball, and I think you're going to have to run the ball against the Giants too. The Giants want to play a game where they just kind of ground and pound it. The Lions are not built for that. I think that if Odell plays, their offense will be back, and I think the Giants will be a little bit better. So I'm going to say the Giants are going to win at home on Monday Night Football. So anyway, there we go. There's my picks. We'll see how I did next week. We'll let you guys know. As always, feel free in the comment sections to let me know what you guys' picks are, or if I'm dead wrong, or if I said somebody's name wrong, or if I just don't know what I'm talking about. I'd be more than happy to argue with you guys. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week for our week 3 predictions. Hopefully I'll be like 16-0 for this week, but I will do a complete score at the end of the year, and we'll see where I'm at, and see if you guys should continue to come back and listen to me. But anyway, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you guys later. If you'd like to find me, as always, you can find me at BrianWest53 on Twitter. You can find me at Geek Dad Report on Facebook. Like, subscribe, and if you like this video, share it. Share it with all your friends. I am totally open to being mocked and ridiculed by lots of people. So anyway, next week, guys, we'll see you then. Go Hawks!